Welcome to Fireside Chats with Dr. Dorothy. The title of today's story is Be Still My Heart. I have a quote by a 19th century army wife, Martha Summerhayes, who said, "I cast my lot with the soldier, and where he was home to me." Well, to be totally honest, that was a struggle for me. I grew up with deep, deep roots, close family ties, and lifelong friends. And so, moving around the world, often uprooting, connecting and disconnecting, being uncertain as to exactly when and where we would go next, I found that very, very difficult to maneuver. So I'm going to share a true story that really, have you ever had someone say something that just knocked your socks off? Totally unexpected, but you'll never ever forget the moment. I was at home in LaPorte, Texas, in my mother and daddy's house, the house where I grew up. Mother was very ill, and she had elected to stop dialysis. She had asked the doctor, how long does someone generally live if they stop dialysis? And he said, generally 8 to 12 days, 10 being the average. And so it had already been at least a week. She was in a lot of pain, so we called in hospice, and they had been treating her with morphine for the pain for several days. So we knew that her time was very limited. It was important to her. She always loved her home, and it was a great home to grow up in. And so she wanted to die at home. I thought it was a very brave choice for her to make, to just stop dialysis. But she had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and she didn't want to have to experience that painful a death. And so she elected to just stop. And she was prepared to go. So I was sitting there by her hospital bed in the living room that we had brought in. I was holding her hand, and the hospice chaplain had come by to visit. The hospice chaplain was on the other side of her bed, and I was sitting and holding Mother's hand. The chaplain began to ask her reflective questions. And she asked her, "Evelyn, what is the most wonderful thing that happened to you in your life?" And it took Mother a minute to clear her head enough to answer, but she without hesitation at that point, said, being Lawrence's wife and Bert and Dorothy's mother, and being a grandmother. And my heart felt peace and satisfaction at that answer. I realized that that would have been a totally fulfilling role for Mother, and she had lived her purpose. She was a great mother, a great grandmother, and for a very brief time, a great great grandmother. Then the chaplain asked her, "What was your greatest pain?" Hurt, disappointment. Immediately my mind went to the loss of their first baby. They lost their first little girl at 10 months old, very unexpectedly, very suddenly, from pneumonia. And I just assumed, and I had watched her, through the years with an unresolved grief from that loss that she always struggled with. I assumed her answer would be losing their first baby, Billy Wanda, at only 10 months old. But her answer was not at all what I expected. Without hesitation, she answered the chaplain, "When Dorothy and family went to Saudi Arabia." I was completely taken aback. My heart be still in my heart. It felt like it was going to just leave my chest. I mean, it wasn't an intentional stab in the heart, but I was so expecting a different answer. I knew that she had struggled with our having to travel. It's a struggle that all military wives and children and families have to go through if they have close family ties or deep roots somewhere. Some I've talked to, that's not a struggle for them for various reasons. But for me, it was an intense struggle throughout our career and our service. It was always a struggle for Mother, and she anguished that her only daughter had to leave and be far away most of our career. Even though I made an extra effort to remain close to my family and my lifelong friends, it still was a difficult thing to navigate. So I always knew that it was the biggest thing for her to deal with. And for me, it was the hardest thing that I had to deal with. In addition to the disconnecting, the constant transition, the connection, and then the pain of just as I began to get to know people, to feel like I add value in a new community, that I perhaps belonged there, we had to start the cycle all over again. So that's why I've created a supportive community and a Warrior Wives Academy to help military wives and children in this transition process and the reintegration process of when the soldier or the airman or whatever branch of service you serve is deployed and away for a year, sometimes more, sometimes less. But everyone in the family is affected and changed by the experience. And so I have Warrior Wives Community on Facebook. I invite you to join there. And I have my website, DorothyGuyBonvillain.com. And there's a series of blogs there. There are these fireside chats where, I tell you a true story and then a lesson learned. My lesson learned there was that I had a deep sense of the pain that she had experienced for all of our career because we were away, but I didn't know the depth of it. So 2 days later, she passed. And that's always been a very difficult memory for me to process when I think back, and to think that leaving to go to the Middle East was even more painful to her heart than losing her first child. And she was only 17 years old with her first baby. She married Daddy at 16. They had a great love for each other. And the baby was suddenly sick. The doctor did house calls. He came to the house. He gave him some medicine and told him she should be fine within 24 hours. And she died in Daddy's arms on the way to the hospital, into the emergency room. Our being posted abroad was that deeply devastating for her. I know it was hard for Daddy too, but it was particularly hard for Mother. We were very, very close all of my growing up years. And even though we were different in personality and the way we approached life, we were very close and loved each other deeply. So that was my greatest struggle as a military wife. And when I read this quote by Martha Summer Hayes, and she was a 19th century Army wife, but wherever, I had cast my lot with my soldier, reluctantly. He had to convince me of that because I wanted to be stable, to raise a family. But he convinced me. And where he was, where was home to him, was home to Martha Summerhays. I always created a home. It was a great life. I would not be who I am today without the experiences of serving as a military wife and mother, and serving our country as a support. I call it an appendage to the military need. But nonetheless, it is a service role, and it's important for our nation. And so I have this support group. I'm developing content for military families, absolutely from my firsthand experience. You can't put a value on firsthand experiences and lessons learned. So join me, DorothyGuyBonvillain.com. I invite you there, and to our Warrior Wives community, where we can support each other and help each other by sharing lessons learned. I'll see you next week.